Right, we are now going to move on with a really fast-paced, entertaining, exciting debate on the current state of the iGaming industry. We've got some rockstar panelists lined up. They're going to discuss which organizations and verticals are currently overhyped and which should be the focus for the rest of 2023. And also where savvy investors should be looking for the best opportunities. Now, this was a massive hit at iGaming Next in New York. And, this panel is very much backed by popular demand. I mentioned we have some rockstar panelists to do the debate, and we also have a rockstar moderator. My dear friends, please join me in welcoming to the stage. He is the partner from Princeton Public Affairs Group Incorporated. He is, of course, the great Bill Pascrell III. Please welcome BP3. Great to see you, Bill. Welcome.
Might be time for sunglasses. Good afternoon, everyone. Please join with me in welcoming our debaters, giants in the industry, gaming and sports betting advisor for Pinnacle. Has been in the industry for a long time, although she doesn't look it. Paris Smith. Paris? Let's hear it for Paris. Come on. And also join with me in welcoming Max Meltzer, CEO of Gaming. Max. Ladies and gentlemen, Johnny Carson has nothing over Ocean. What a tremendous MC we have today. So, Ocean, thank you so much.
But your check is in the post. Your mic is cutting out, so this is just a backup.
Okay. All right. Can you hear me okay? All right. Thank you. I also want to thank Pierre and Rory and Martin, the leadership of iGaming Next, and the wonderful staff who've treated us yet again to a wonderful experience in my favorite place, Malta. So this is Pardon the Disruption. And it's a famous show in America. I don't know if you catch it over here. But we're going to have a very good, robust debate. They got a clock for me. I can't shut up. Is the mic still?
Yeah.
All right, okay.
There's.
So our first topic that we want Max and Paris to debate on is what is the current state of iGaming across the globe, and maybe with a little focus on the emerging market in America. Paris?
I think with iGaming, one of the most interesting areas for me is the casino regulation in the U.S. market. So there's, it's much slower because of just the Bible Belts and the different issues with that, and the land-based casinos not wanting it. But, when you look at the iGaming, that is where, you talk about what is offshore within sports betting in Costa Rica, but what's offshore in casinos is really dominant. And, that's just, if the idea is to increase some revenue and get tax dollars in, that's a massive missed opportunity.
Max?
I think, can you hear me? Right?
Yeah.
I think if a lot of the times a lot of companies are now having to pivot and look at light grey market opportunities. We're looking at global operators. There seems to be a different proliferation of opportunity across grey markets, etc. For the US, in particular, I think iCasino is where a lot of companies have started to realize that's where there's huge amounts of gain. I think even iCasino surprised DraftKings that may well be their future, really, in relation to everything that's going to grow out of things. But I think America is not moving as quickly as perhaps we would have thought and believed for iCasino. Also, I think that the cost of doing business in the US is too stringent, too difficult for a lot of businesses. So now they're trying to look at other opportunities elsewhere. Europe's becoming very heavily regulated. I think a lot of people are looking elsewhere, and that's because the pressure is there to drive profitability. And there's not as much cash available pumped around to keep building up in particular markets like the US, and can they last until online casino, for example, happens? People are focusing heavily on where can they start hitting the bottom line in the next 18 months. So I think that's where we're as state as an iGaming business at the moment.
Paris, following up on that, 36 states plus the District of Columbia have legalized, regulated sports betting.
Yeah.
Some online, some retail only, some both. Why the slow roll on iGaming?
I think it's mostly the the land-based casinos. There's this misperception that it's going to take away from their current brands, from their current operations, but it's actually been proven to be the opposite. So that's probably one of the biggest blockers. And, just that concept of responsible gaming and gambling addiction, but there's definitely a way around that. And that would be to create within the games those, the indicators that there might be a problem and, explain to people. Because if you're looking at the long game, you definitely, that could be something where it's proactively being looked at rather than having a regulator who doesn't understand the game put different stipulations in place.
I think they're fearful of regulation, which could allow competitors or people they've been competing with for a while to enter the market, like in California. They really don't want the card rooms to start gaining more power in California, right? And I think there are certain markets they're just very, very worried about opening up that level of regulation. Sports wagering was kind of untouched. They could allow that, but as soon as it comes into casino, will it start impacting other? They're worried it's not just going to be online, it's also going to be what land-based casino regulation changes could be chucked in whilst they're at it. I think that's going to scare a lot of the casinos.
Max, we know there's massive barriers to entry, costs, compliance, the RG world. Why would any operator that's not in licensed markets consider entering them?
Entering licensed markets if they're in alternatives? Well, it's just that will always come down to the level of opportunity, right? I'm sure this is the sort of thing that Bet365 analyse on a regular basis, and whether they should go deep enough. And I think it might be that you might want to develop expertise within a certain area so that you can monitor and be able to quickly access a market should it grow to a level of that could be profitable for your business. And also you can start thinking about, because it's not quick, you have to think about corporate structures, subsidiaries, spin-offs, how you enter. And that's not as America is not something you just figure out and go into in 6 months. It's years of preparation if you've got a business that's been elsewhere. So I think you might as well put your finger on the pulse by entering early with perhaps a small play. So I think that's why.
Paris, you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, I think this is why everybody is looking at casinos more so in an unregulated market. The cost of entry, the cost of just doing business in general. Of course, you still apply all the different KYCs and everything as any unregulated market jurisdiction would make you do. But it's about making money. Right. So I think the unregulated markets, regulated markets are really the way to go. Look at Asia. There's many people that make all their profits in Asia, so they can afford to enter the U.S. market.
And I suppose the difference was it wasn't just about making money at one point. It was about creation of market value or company value.
Yes.
Now that's swinging towards more profitability. But
that's popping the CapEx, right?
Yeah.
Max, let's talk about leadership in the industry. And let's not just focus on one jurisdiction, but globally. Who, in your opinion, are providing true leadership to create a more sustainable industry?
Well, it's a good question. I think first of all, we're seeing a huge turnover of senior leadership throughout a lot of publicly listed businesses, whether that was 888 through to Kindred. I think that's a squeeze of business model focuses, profitability, and also activism, right? There's a lot of activism within shareholder groups, trying to push mergers, consolidation. Perhaps now is the time in certain organizations. I think if you look at certain leaders, perhaps within the industry, that have really shown how to dynamically change and still progress without taking huge risks, this might not go down so favorably, but genuinely, I think if you look at Betson's share price, they went through all that period of COVID through to today, and they're sustainable and growing still as an organization. And I think a lot of companies will be thinking, well, how come Betson came out the other side of this with a much improved share price in comparison to others? So I think there's some good leadership here if we're talking outside of the US, to give that as an example.
Paris?
And obviously FanDuel as well in the US.
Yeah. Can't take my answer. So in the U.S., I've always looked at FanDuel, very positively, just based on the fact that they took a true sports book model and entered the market. Even though it was FanDuel, they had the Paddy Power backing and the Betfair backing as well, the inside information. So, I like what they're doing. I think with the original question of what Max is pointing out, all the different changes. For example, myself leaving the leadership of Pinnacle. It's just a different time. It's a different industry. I started, there was no internet, and now all of a sudden, regulation compliance is the number one thing on everybody's list. It's at the top of the priority list. I've thought for myself that is there going to be an expiration date? Check it. Is there somewhere an expiration date on me? 17 years with Pinnacle and 11 years before that. So, it's going to be interesting to see what these new leaders that are brought in, what they can do. And I always believe, fresh eyes are a benefit. So I think there are going to be some additional leadership changes as well.
That's pretty classic leadership for you to do that yourself and not be pushed out like so many others hang around for. Just a little bit of an issue. We didn't script this, but this is really a new item on the leadership post. Why are so many companies based in Europe so loathsome to acquire U.S. companies? And because I haven't seen it often, not many, it's the reverse, but not coming in. And also, when companies take a thought about acquiring another business, like we'll talk about a little later, where's the play between online and offline? Is there opportunity still? And if so, where?
Yeah. I think the play for online to offline is more like within the Latin American market. You need to have that direct partnership in order to enter the market effectively from a localization perspective and the regulatory perspective.
Look, I think if online and offline does not find a way of really connecting together in the US, I think there is very little chance that we're going to see online casino progress in terms of regulation. So actually, I think it's more about, and it's on us as an industry as well, to show that we can create these omni-channel, all the stuff we've heard, but not people being so good at actually producing, will actually generate such an excitement among tribal leaders, etc., that actually generate an online to offline. So I think most exciting is even at least the loyalty schemes of MGM, but could that go further? I think that will attract a lot of investment there. As to your former question, I think why it's not happening, one is value. I think the prices of American businesses are probably too substantial to be swallowed. There's probably different multiples for US businesses against others. And also technology and expertise for what's available in the US is probably not as available as it is in Europe, but there will always be a crossover. And I've always been a big believer that some of the most innovation will occur from the US. But I think that the valuations and the expertise is not at a level that would be as attractive for Europeans right now, unless it's something truly big, truly big.
Fantastic. Let's move on to RG.
In the spirit of debate, I would disagree.
Yeah.
Because you
here
already
we go.
there we go. You've got the sports books that are already established, WinBet. Just because they're WinBet land-based, they have not been able to turn that around from an online perspective. So, I've always believed that the land-based versus online, it's almost a different business. It's like poker sportsbook. It's very different, and unless there's a collaboration, which is maybe what you were referring to, it's going to be very difficult. It's a whole different focus.
But it's in the spirit of debate, the political landscape of the US is such that yes, WinBet's one thing. That's a big commercial organization. Tribes, they just won't, unless there's some reason for them, real high value reason for them to try and push through legislation or change their compacts, etc. They just won't do it. And for WinBet explicitly, if we're going to talk about a company, that's a business that spent a lot on marketing, didn't have the technology in place to actually be sustainable. And we've seen other businesses like Churchill Downs just not be able to keep up. And I think...
And pull out.
Yeah. So it's a lot, I think a lot of it is about how do we demonstrate to prove to the tribes that it's worth trying to fight in those states that are really, really tribal driven to get to online casino. Otherwise it's going to take years. So I think one thing is the WinBets of the world, and the other one is how do we work with the tribes to progress this.
Moving on to responsible gaming. Is this a waste of time and a fool's errand? Why is it so important? And if so, why should operators care other than the ethically responsible thing to do? Is it commercially responsible?
I think with responsible gaming, it is about, being, responsible, of course, but, it is very, very necessary. It is from not just a regulator perspective, but from a business perspective. I don't want to have, I'd rather have 100,000 players and not 10 players that are losing their lives for it. I think we all have a general responsibility to gaming, and it's not, we've always been very, from a bonus abuse perspective, we've always looked at players and looked at their behaviors. And, many years ago, we had players that all of a sudden their player activity went extremely high. And then you find out, you Google their name and they're embezzling money from their bank that they work for. Call the authorities, let them know, hey, we're here, this is what they've been doing. So, just looking and understanding and protecting those players, that's the whole purpose of regulation, to have the rules, protect the players, and make revenue. So I think it is a very critical part of the puzzle.
A lot of leading companies are going to be utilizing automation or some sort of technologies that can help derive and understand their player activities. In fact, a lot of trading will be understanding the players, right? And I think there's no reason why with those automated tools that you can't implement warnings that communicate to your CS agents or whatever to contact this player and make sure they're being looked after. And also, as a player, to have the optionality to set your own limits is actually a positive thing. I don't think that is a negative thing, and I think we should be everyone has their limits, everyone has their own things. It helps guide things. And the more we focus on it, the more that we show that we are responsible, the more opportunity we have to show regulators and influence them that we are not a harmful industry, because we're not. We're an entertainment industry, and this is the best way of approaching it.
The other thing is when you allow the regulator to put in the rules, even just basic, when you have somebody come in from a company and say, okay, this is what responsible gaming is, they basically flag every VIP player that you have. So to work and be proactive, you can, at least protect your business with the players that you have already confirmed with source of wealth, every other thing, and put them and allow them to play in an entertainment way that they want to.
I think there's going to be a massive incident in the US at one point. I'm putting out that would be my little prediction. I think there'll be one big incident that will cause a lot of stir and change everything in the US.
Yeah, one newspaper article away from the whole thing hitting the fan, right? Some politician, or regulator's son, daughter, mother, father, brother, sister hitting the rat hole. We're going to move on to a topic that I really am looking forward to sharing with you all, with Max and Paris. We'll start off with Paris. David versus Goliath. Let's talk about the massive IP case that GeoComply brought against XPoint.
That's a very interesting case. I think, what we kind of fail to realize is that GeoComply did the work. They've been behind the scenes building out this product as soon as they got a sniff that this could be happening. And, there was years and years of investment and work that got them where they want to be and where they are today. I think XPoint, great opportunity. potentially they've come to the table too quickly and deployed something that wasn't 100% ready to be deployed. So that's where they're going to stumble with the technology and the, and of course, GeoComply, because they are established, there's some very deep pockets that XPoint has to go up against.
I think GeoComply are well within their rights to fight their corner. Why wouldn't any other business do so when they, even if they, whatever the result of that court case is? But it's, look, GeoComply have their own things we could discuss, but obviously they're taking huge liabilities and risk taking on when you are the geolocation provider. Many businesses, I think the DraftKings, I think Entain do, everyone has versions of geolocation technology within their own organizations. They actually decide proactively not to invest and let someone else take that investment level on. XPoint needs to go out and prove itself to other organizations. That's as simple as it is. They're live, right? So then there should be get some of the customers to come out and start talking about the success and go from there.
Has the defeat or the loss of the case with attorney's fees going to XPoint embarrassed GeoComply, and is the monopoly busted now?
I don't think the monopoly is busted. I would love to see a company that has amazing GeoComply for other reasons enter the market. Microsoft, they all have it. They all have a component onto their businesses. That would be an interesting spinoff to start trying to get into the market.
Max, great.
Don't agree, Max.
No, I think it doesn't mean, though, that, we do need fairer market capacity and competition throughout. It would be good for GeoComply to have good market competition. I think if you had someone like David or Anna up here, they probably welcome competition. I think that's fair, because I've always seen it even in previous organizations, and I used to work for Canby before I founded Strive. Actually, I think SB Tech, being such a competitor at the time to Canby, made Canby better. So that's the kind of marketplace I think we should welcome, and I think most companies should welcome.
Great. We're going to move on to the next topic, gray and black markets. Why aren't we still seeing an anxiousness for companies to enter into regulated markets when they're making bundles of cash in the black and gray markets without all the compliance, barriers to entry, and the high costs?
Well, first of all, I suppose you might not hear about the ones that are in the grey and black markets as much as you might in the regulated markets. It's very much more open for everyone to be aware of it. I think that there is more focus now going into grey markets. Now, obviously, my business focus primarily on North America, and it's heavily regulated, and you have to be super clean. But as we've come out, the pressures of profitability is driving more companies to consider grey markets heavily, and I think that's happening right now, and people are having quite a lot of success. And also, if there isn't enough punishment to go from grey into when it does get regulated, then the barriers to entering these dark grey markets are lowering. It's just there'll be different components to businesses. That's my view. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but there'll be ones that you hear about, and there'll be other businesses that you don't hear about. That's just, I'm sure people are targeting.
Well, I think there's 3 areas, to be clear: regulated, unregulated, which is like the Malta, Isle of Man, Curacao, and then black. And the companies that are in the black, they're going to be there. They have no ambitions to do anything different. They have no ambitions to travel to the States. The ones that are, I think most people are in that in-between stage. And again, at one point, Max, you alluded to it, there was a world where, if Pinnacle got a US license, our market value would be astronomical. But those values aren't the same anymore. So it's the playing field has changed a bit, I think.
Is it fair for regulators, but forget particular jurisdictions, but for regulators to frown upon allowing a black or gray market company from entering their jurisdiction just because of past what they would deem bad behavior? Shouldn't we be incentivizing those black market companies to enter into the markets? You can rehabilitate.
Yeah, I think black market is a different story. The gray markets, it's already had precedent set.
Yeah, but explain that. Why is it different? Why, if I'm a black market operator and I want to now stop, I have to wait 5, 10 years?
If you stop. But
Right.
I think part of the problem is people don't stop.
Right. Right. What do you think, Max?
I actually think a lot of the times it happens already. I've seen many businesses that have been in these black markets repurpose themselves and re-enter a much cleaner slate, and they're now in regulated markets, just to be truthful.
Yeah.
So I think they find their ways anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Path of least resistance.
It's still a heavy task for these organisations. Still makes sense to try and be the cleanest you can possibly be to get into these regulated markets. But there are people who will always find a way. But you also don't know how long that lasts. How long before people become stricter on enforcement? How long before people start to get more critical? And as I said about US having one incident might be responsible gaming. It could be something to do with an operator doing something extremely bad. And if that happens, that will also awaken the US to really be heavy-handed with people, for example.
Let's move on to the next topic, startups. The overhyped versus the focused. And let's get particular, let's get granular. Who are the hyped companies and who are the focused companies that are going to be moving forward, entering to the market? Paris?
I think the hype companies, the problem that I have with, I think startups are phenomenal. There's a lot of great new stuff that other companies have no opportunity or maybe even capability to come up with on their own. So that's the best part about it. But, and now, as you've seen with the two main groups, YOLO and Happy Hour, like they're kind of guiding and supporting, which is great. So then they have more of an opportunity to be successful. But there's so many that, you see the same thing that everybody has. One of my things I'm not a big believer in is peer-to-peer. Everybody has a peer-to-peer startup. And it's like, it's never made money before. It's probably not going to make money now. Exchange betting, if it was such a great deal, it probably would have, Betfair would be thriving in America, but they're not. So, for me, it's more about the focus of what those startups are doing. So rather than a specific startup.
I think a lot of investment went into companies that are trying to be innovative on the fringes, and there was a time where everyone was just thinking, well, these companies could go from zero to, and I just don't think that exists. You need to be actually going, what do I actually solve a problem that exists right now? I feel like so many businesses that have invested in are not actually addressing anything that people are either really wanting or fixing problems, and they're just like little certain games or something like that, or a particular area of sports betting so niche that that's not going to really change the dial. Focusing on particular sports. Now we're really good at, I don't know, a pickleball or something like that. So really, it's not. And going, we're really special. That's not really that's not going to change the needle. I think it's more about businesses that are solving problems that are generating and things like jackpots, that sort of thing, and there are lots of elements around not peer-to-peer, but creating social experiences.
We're going to move on to our final topic before the quick fire round. Social gaming. Is it just a tool for acquisition of players? Can it be more meaningful? We talked a little bit earlier about poker stars and what they used to do, giving folks rewards, right? Chips or T-shirts and hats and coasters. Paris, talk a little bit about social gaming and its utility.
I think it's twofold. One, it's for marketing purposes. It's to, especially in a regulated market within the states, a state that's not regulated, you can, start getting your brand out there, your name out there. And then also to let people understand how the games work. It could be a little bit educational as well. But, the social gaming side of it is just so much, that's so far on the entertainment side of the gaming, not so much on the profit side.
Max, 30 seconds.
Well, I do disagree in some ways because I think that there are companies that make extraordinary money on social gaming. I think there is an example of SciPlay, which is owned by Light and Wonder. If you ever look at their revenues, it's phenomenal for a business that says it's just social gaming. And they're paying for credits, they're paying for that entertainment. And in some you can genuinely make amazing business out of social gaming. It doesn't necessarily need to be just non-regulated. They're successful even within regulated markets because it's just a different sector that perhaps sometimes don't cross into real money.
Fast fire rounds. Questions. Quick, short, fast. We got about a minute. Will California go next year after the abysmal failure last year? 18% of the poll, the Indian gaming referendum beat Proposition 27. 600 million spent, 18% of the poll. California next year?
No.
No, year after.
Texas next year? No, because they're out of session. 2025?
No.
No.
Wow, agreement. Florida?
I hope.
You hope.
Not next year.
I think something will happen in Florida for sure.
When?
Potentially even next year.
Not this year.
Not this year.
Okay. Who will ultimately acquire PointsBet?
Fanatic.
Wow.
PointsBet.
Okay.
I think they're gonna. I think they still. No, if anything happens, Fanatics at the end of the year, it's gonna drag on.
Has regulatory overreach diminished innovation?
Yes.
No reason for it to do so.
Has regulatory overreach moved operators to rethink and go back into black markets?
Dark grey markets, yes.
Okay.
Yes, great.
All right, last fire. Should the industry care about advertising bans and why? Quick. Oh.
Yes.
They have to, but there are other forms of reaching customers now than ever before.
Like?
Social media, Kick, Twitch, etc. There are other routes.
Ladies and gentlemen, join with me in thanking Paris and Max. They did a tremendous job, and thank you for listening. Back to Ocean.
You win, Max. You win.
Thanks, guys.